Uh, Good morning, Baroda book browsers. A very warm welcome. And before I begin with my initial remarks, let me wish and hope all of you, along with your family members, are taking adequate care to stay safe and fit in the midst of an ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So we are here at it for the book review today. The book is 2030, How Today's Biggest Trends Will Collide and Reshape the Future of Everything. In just 2 lines, what the book tries to convey is that the world is changing drastically, and it is happening in front of our eyes. And the question that it puts to vast swath of people is that, are you prepared for what is coming next? And what is coming next is not in distant future. It is already on our doorsteps. The fast pace of life which all of us live today, the years race past. And 2030, now that we are already in the middle of 2021, is not very far away. So in that sense, the apocalyptic or metamorphic changes that these current trends, when they collide and will unfold, is like an elephant in the room already. And this thought-provoking book is backed by well-informed analysis and illuminates most important trends. And what are they? The demographic shifts, then the rising global middle class, including in the so-called dark African continent, the rise of women as entrepreneurs and leaders, and more computers than human brains. That is a scenario which is already unfolding. And more importantly, there will be more sensors than human eyes, and even more currencies, including digital currency, than the current conventional paper currency. And this has already happened. More cell phones than the toilet. At least in India, we can find nearly 100 crore cell phones are already being used by its population. So this book is both a remarkable guide to the coming changes and an exercise in the power of lateral thinking, which will be required, and thereby revolutionizing the way you think about the apocalyptic changes and the consequences that it will bring about in our lives. And are we prepared for those changes or not? That is what the author probably leaves us with a big question mark, and a lot of thought to ponder over. So that's about the book. I will not talk about the author. I will leave it to Apurva, the today's reviewer, to give you a brief about author Mauro Gillian. And before I hand over to Apurva, let me introduce her in brief. Apurva is a mechanical engineer from Nagpur. She currently works in L&T Technologies at Vadodara. She is a technocrat. She has, in her childhood years, traveled widely across India and abroad. And in fact, she has had schooling in some 11 schools. So that speaks a lot. She is naturally a travel enthusiast. In fact, traveled across the length and breadth of the globe. But apart from works, he has a plethora of interests, and those interests are varied. He is an urban farmer, a cyclist, a badminton and table tennis player, avid board gamer, yoga enthusiast, and finds time in the midst of myriad of such interests to lend her services to educate underprivileged children. Apurva had reviewed earlier a book, Nudge, in this forum. So I will not stand much before you and the next proceedings, the review. I hand you over to Apurva. Apurva, please go ahead and carry out the book review. Over to Apurva. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunil sir, for the succinct review. And hopefully we can have hybrid meetings soon in our forum. So good morning and namaste, everybody. Welcome to a book review on 2030, how today's biggest trends will collide and reshape future of everything. Okay, I really enjoyed reading this book. It opened my eyes to many new concepts and ideas, and hopefully you'll enjoy this session too. So let's begin. I'll start sharing my screen. Okay, let me know if it is visible. Right, so the book is written by Mauro F. Guillen, around 280 pages. The book is originally published in August 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. The author has published this book. So he has tried to cover what are the effects of pandemic going to be. Essentially, the trends discussed in the book are only going to accelerate due to the pandemic. The genre is nonfiction. It is essentially on economics and global market trends, right? I am gonna, yeah, there we go. All right, the publisher is St. Martin's Press, and the country is the United States of America. A bit more about the author. He is a Spaniard. He hails from Spain. He is a doctorate in sociology from Yale, and then he became an American citizen. He is an economist and a management educator. In March 21, he was announced as the new director of Cambridge Judge Business School. And for 25 years, this author has dedicated his life to teaching students at Wharton. He is one of the original thinkers of Wharton. He is a market leader in global trends, right? He has authored a dozen books and over 30 scholarly articles. He is a futurist and an optimist and a sought-after public speaker. He appears regularly in TV programs and radio programs, and he has an online following on Coursera and edX of around 100,000 students. The author has dedicated 7 years of his life in research of the book. So a lot of effort has gone in making this book. Let me give you an overview of the book. It is essentially has 8 chapters and 3 major areas it focuses on: demographics, economy, and technology. In demographics, the author talks about population shifts and the rapidly aging population. In economy, the author talks about females and how they are going to be the millionaires and the leaders of tomorrow. In cities, he fights the challenges that the cities are undergoing and how you can overcome it through wonderful solutions. And essentially, the last few chapters are on technology, how it's changing us, essentially blockchain technology and artificial intelligence. So I would like to share here 2 things. There are a lot of examples from India in the book. You know, people like Kailash Satyarthi, Amartya Sen, Ratan Tata, even Mangalyaan has been praised in the book. So I felt very proud reading all this. Another point is that there are a lot of statistics and data in the book, a lot of facts and figures. I myself will be using a lot of them. So they're backed by well-informed analysis and predictive analysis, which is huge, right? 30 pages of sources are present in the book which say where this information is coming from. So the author, says that one cannot predict the future, but one can approach it wisely. So who wants to know what's going to happen in 2030? I'm going to take you a sneak peek. So the largest middle-class consumer market is going to shift from Western Europe and Americas to India and China. We are going to be the emerging economy and going to be really, really powerful globally because of the sheer power of the consumer class and middle class. So the companies will have no choice but to shift their focus and on the market trends that are in India and China. Around 200 million people, are present in these areas that you see on the globe on the red, but in 2030 also there are going to be 210. So essentially these economies are stagnant and saturated, but the boom is going to happen in India and China. What is going to happen to our waistline, right? Essentially we are going to have plenty of food. By 2030 we will have less hungry people in the world, 100 million, but we are going to get fatter, essentially due. You can see 650 million people were obese. By 2030, we are almost doubling. So are we heading for the new pandemic? Well, this is my thought. The book says that around 50% of the population in America is projected to be obese. Now, this is huge, right? And I call this a Pandora's box or a pandemic. Why? Because it opens up, to heart diseases, diabetes, cardiac problems, so many host of other problems. So who all of you have exercised today, right? 5 days a week will go a long way in curbing this pandemic. And yoga day is happening tomorrow. So that's a good muhurat to start exercising. This is on a lighter note. Now let's move on. The clock is ticking. We are just 9 years away from 2030. The familiar world is rapidly vanishing. Today, the world is neatly divided into emerging economies and developed economies. But soon we are going to have more grandparents than grandchildren, more currencies than countries, more human brains, more computers than human brains, and more sensors than human eyes. So that will be the world in 2030. The author essentially carrying 45 liters of water. It is essentially 45 liters of water that it can carry. It is plastic and it can travel on many, many surfaces. So this is very interesting, and the women's lives become simpler. So even Neel Kamal in India, if you can see my image here, is starting producing this. So next time you go to villages, you see this, hope you remember this, right? Moving on. So how are our cities gonna look like in 2030? If you can see on my screen, my pointer, right? Around 1.1% of the world's land is occupied by cities. By population, we are at 60%, which is huge, right? The population in the world is going to grow in cities by 60%. The carbon emissions produced in cities is 87%.